So every year, the industry does this little magic trick. They release something polished, creative, genuinely fun, really good, high-quality stuff, and then is totally shocked when a game doesn't sell like Call of Duty despite being in some niche genre, releasing next to 4 or 5 much larger games, or marketing that amounts to a tweet and a prayer. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 recent good games that didn't sell well. Before we get going, I think it goes without saying, these would be great games for you to try if you haven't. They probably cost way less now, and it's worth showing support to some great games that never really got the support they should have got. If you're not interested in it, obviously don't, but we're gonna say this is a list of games that if you haven't played, probably higher priority than any other list of games you haven't played, because these are at very least proven in quality, if not necessarily subjectively your taste. Worth saying, let's get past it and talk about number 10, which you're gonna know exactly why I said all of that when I reveal it's about the Dead Space remake. EA completely mishandled the Dead Space franchise, despite it being mostly excellent, and a big reason for that is because they wanted and demanded Resident Evil sales numbers. But they didn't want to put the work into getting those sales numbers. They had the product that absolutely could have done that, but their desperation for these numbers in what's generally considered a niche genre is what led to most of the problems with Dead Space 3. And that game originally killed the franchise. For a brief moment, it seemed like the series was coming back better than ever with the remake, but once again the series failed to reach EA's lofty sales expectations, and the series was put back into the closet, possibly for good, which sucks because, honestly, it sold 2 million copies. That's the number I see swirling around, and that is more than a solid number. The original game's lifetime sales were 2 million copies. If they had continued to support this game, it probably would have gotten more attention, but instead, EA pulled the plug shortly after the game came out, and that left it in an unoptimized state on PC. This is apparently something EA just does, though. I don't think it has anything to do with the game's sales. It's because they pretty much did the exact same thing with Jedi Survivor. They seemed happy with the sales for that. So I think EA just hates, patching their games, doing work. And here's the problem. By normal estimation, the Dead Space remake was not only not a flop, but it was excellent. It deserves any attention you could shower upon it. It fixed so many issues with the original games, it added some more good content tastefully, and actually made some of the weapons other than the plasma cutter actually useful. It's an interesting remake because it's not a full reimagining like one of the Resident Evil games, but it's not a completely accurate recreation of the first game either. It's somewhat of a hybrid, but I will say leaning closer to faithful than not. A lot of the areas are still more or less the same layout. It's just they're all connected now. So there are obviously a couple of things that needed to be shifted around. And again, the extra content, which provides more context and maybe makes Dead Space 1 and 2 a little bit better unified. Fans were mixed on the idea of making Isaac talk. I think it makes sense given he talks in the second one, and the second one is excellent. I don't think that it undermines anything about the first one. He doesn't talk a lot because he doesn't need to, but the places where he does talk, I would talk. I don't know, it's such an excellent remake. It should have been more than successful enough at 2 million copies sold for EA to greenlight a remake of the sequel. Not that it needs a remake, but I would really like to see it get the same treatment this game got. And keep in mind, this was a full-priced game, so unless their budget was stupid and astronomical, which I doubt, they made money. They just didn't make all the money like they do with live service games when they actually hit, which is 1 out of 10,000 chances. The gaming industry. Before we go any further, there are actually more people who are watching right now that aren't subscribed, and we think it's a good time to ask to at least make attempts towards changing that. We appreciate very much that you're watching either way, but we gotta ask, please click the subscribe button. It's doing us a huge solid, helps us out a lot. We hope it helps you find some stuff you want to see, and we thank you very much for clicking subscribe. Let's get back to the video. At number 9 is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. The funny thing about games is that one man's flop is another's success story. For a $50 side-scrolling Metroidvania title revival of a franchise that hadn't seen a new entry in over 10 years and was available day one on Game Pass, this sold exceedingly well. By October of 2024, this had sold over 1 million units. For a relatively low-budget game like this, which was not really pushed that hard, and again, is $50. That's insane. Especially when you compare it against most other Metroidvanias of this type, which, by the way, are all at lower price points for the most part. The problem wasn't the game's sales, but Ubisoft's sales expectations, which were 3 times this. They wanted it to sell 3 million copies. That is an absurd expectation at $50 for a Metroidvania that they barely marketed. It pisses me off because the planned follow-up was canceled and the team that made it was split up amongst the rest of Ubisoft, which is just so frustrating. So let's be clear, Metroid Dread is one of the best-selling Metroidvanias of all time, and it took that game 2 years to reach 3 million sales. And that is a Metroid game. Like, in the Metroidvania genre, the 2 things that would do the best are Metroid and Castlevania. And who knows what the hell's going on with Castlevania, but a Metroid game is one of the best-selling ever at 3 million copies. Hollow Knight, again for emphasis, Hollow Knight took 2 years to sell 3 million copies. Expecting this new Prince of Persia game to meet or exceed those numbers day one, it's wishful thinking. That, or they were setting the game up to fail, I don't know. It's a shame either way, because it's a really well-made, fantastic game. It's got the challenge you want for a Prince of Persia game. The movement, the platforming is excellent. It's super fun to play. It doesn't need a sequel. It's kind of great as a standalone, but it's a shame that we're not getting one. Other than the Sands of Time remake, which who knows when that materializes, that's it for Prince of Persia. So unless the Sands of Time does really well, I think it's reasonable to assume Prince of Persia is on ice for a while longer, which is stupid because a lot of this comes down to marketing. I'm not saying everything. There are some games that are marketed really well and they bomb because they look completely unnecessary to play. I don't think this is one of those games. I think the $50 price point is wrong. I think if it were a $40 game, it very likely would have sold at least twice as much. 40 looks a lot lower than 50. 30, they maybe could have exceeded their sales targets. That's a huge element. I think marketing was an element as well, because I don't remember this game. I think we at gameranx did more marketing for Prince of Persia than they did. And we did not do any action. We just talked about it. Like, I don't know. A lot of these games, honestly, are exactly that. Like, in theory, we're kind of doing marketing for them all right now. And I really, really want to insist you at least try these. Like, these are not priced at the price they came out at. And they're all great examples of the types of games they are. And number 8 is the first Berserker Khazan. A lot of Souls-likes come out every year, and a game really needs to be special to stand out. Expectations very high. Just being okay doesn't cut it anymore. And that's what's really tragic about this one. It does stand out with its crisp anime art style and pitch-perfect combat. It's one of the best, most polished Souls-likes to come out the past few years, but the sales just didn't reflect it, which is just a huge shame. It could be because of the somewhat generic-looking protagonist. I don't know. He's a little forgettable, but the game itself is not. There's a heavy amount of Neo inspiration here. Like, you could almost call this a Neo-like more than a Souls-like, except instead of filling the game with overly complex systems, Khazan keeps everything much simpler, direct, extremely challenging. That might be what scared people off. It is very tough. It starts hard and it gets harder, but it's fair. Like, I never felt like it was unfair. I'm not like the Michael Jordan of video games, and tough games often are too tough for me. This is a very tough game, and it never felt too tough. I was always eventually able to do it. It's sort of contradictorily an extremely hard game and one of the more accessible Souls-like games. It's definitely, there's got to be some cognitive dissonance there that maybe leaked into how the game did sales-wise. I don't know. We don't know exactly how much it sold. We do know that publisher Nexon considers it a disappointment. Their financial earnings call spelled that out. They called out the game as underperforming. They did consider the game to be a success for bringing more interest to the Dungeon and Fighter series, which I kind of find hard to believe. Sounds like earnings call cope to me, because I can tell you that Khazan is like singularly what I want to play from playing the first Berserker Khazan. I want to play that game. I want to play more of that game. I want to play a sequel to that game. Bottom line is, this game didn't sell all that well, and it deserved better. It's extremely long, like it is more than worth the money, and it doesn't really feel like a slog, and that is automatically like way above a lot of Souls-likes, and it's a shame we'll probably never get a sequel. And number 7 is Kunitsu-Gami, Path of the Goddess. More games need to come out with the PlayStation 2 energy this freaking game has, especially if they manage to be this good. Not being super picky, but it's really nice to see a publisher like Capcom go out of their way and take risks once in a while. Kunitsu-Gami is a risky game. It's a brand new IP, very unusual premise. It combines Japanese folklore with strategic but also action-y gameplay. It's an oddball game made at a very high level, which is the kind of thing we like to see, but it shouldn't be that big of a surprise this one didn't necessarily meet sales expectations. It's a strange-looking game. It's one of those games you kind of need to sell people on, and Capcom didn't really do that. It takes a bit to understand what's going on. According to a statement by Capcom, though, they think that they didn't market it properly, which means they think they didn't get enough eyes on it pre-release or didn't sufficiently explain what the game is. Either, I think, is plausible. It may be both. Either way, though, the result is the same. And it's good that they understand that that's the reason it didn't do well, and not that the game isn't great and doesn't have potential in terms of success, because in all seriousness, it was one of the most interesting and unique games of last year, and it got almost entirely overlooked, which is a massive shame because it needs a lot more attention. It's not a game for everyone, but if you get hooked into it, you get hooked into it. At number 6 is the Talos Principle Reawakened. For as great as these philosophical puzzle games are, they've always been real niche. Once in a while, a puzzle game manages to break through to the mainstream like The Witness, but it doesn't really happen to the Talos Principle games, at least it hasn't yet. The sequel was considered a success by the studio, and even that was generally overlooked by the larger gaming community. But even in comparison to that, the 2025 remake of the original Talos Principle was way under the radar. It was basically skimming the surface. It was flying so low. At the time of writing, the game has only 810 reviews on Steam, with SteamDB saying that the game's all-time peak was only 737 active users at a time, which is practically nothing for a game like this. We don't really know exactly what the developers think about how the game performed, but it's pretty clear from these numbers the game got overlooked, even by people who like these games. The amount of reviews that the Talos Principle 2 has was over 8,000, like more than enough to say 10 times more than this one, even though these were released only a little more than a year apart. With Reawakened, I think the thing that killed it was the price point, though. $40 for a remake of a game most fans still think holds up. Kind of an ask. I mean, the remake does improve the game, though. The changes they made to how to do the recorder puzzles, in my opinion, is definitely worth a remake. And the game comes with an all-new expansion that adds in some really difficult puzzles for the most intense Talos Principle players. It's a little overpriced, and some see it as somewhat unnecessary, but this is a great remake of an already fantastic game that brings some solid improvements as well as new content to the original game. It's also only $30 now, which is probably a much more fair price point, honestly. At number 5 is Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden. This is the very definition of a AA game. It used to be that was a pejorative, like the game was lacking in originality or substance, but let's be serious. AA is a bigger compliment than AAA is now. Between this game and Don't Nod's previous attempt at a heavy choice-driven narrative adventure game, Vampire, they're 2 for 2. Banishers is an even more ambitious take on that concept, where you essentially play a colonial-era witcher, traveling around the haunted new world dealing with supernatural problems. The choices you can make are legitimately difficult and have long-lasting consequences, and the exploration and gameplay is a lot more fleshed out and solid than you generally expect for a game like this. The combat can be hit or miss with people, but I really grew to like it after giving it a little time.
Standing by.
Get lost, won't you?
If you really can't stomach it, you can turn the combat difficulty way down. I do think it's worth at least trying to get a grip because it's better than people give it credit for. Same goes for Vampire, honestly. It's not as janky in terms of combat. It's not like the best combat ever, but neither is this. And they're not really the thing that you have to do in order to enjoy the game. They're just part of the game. The game, by the way, did get solid reviews. The sales were a completely different story. They sold well below the developers' expectations for it. This is from Don't Nod themselves. They probably had pretty realistic realistic expectations, might I add. And the game is still way below that, which is a shame. It's a good game. It was definitely a lot more fun than it appears.
They brought more friends.
Stop that spectre before it possesses the corpse.
Try this on for size. Away with it.
And number 4 is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. This is the drum that I will continue beating until this damn game sells a ton. It will be a one-bird marketing army for this game as long as I am allowed to talk about it. But to be fair, the writing was kind of on the wall. The game only got 1,000 Steam reviews. But that doesn't mean that Sega's Q3 and 4 2025 financial report, which reveals in no uncertain terms that the game sold well below expectations, doesn't mean it's not a gut punch. It apparently sold about 1/10 as much as the last game from the Streets of Rage 4 developer that made this one. That is a big drop. And it really sucks because this Shinobi is awesome. It's a fantastic modernization of an old classic, beautiful artwork, satisfying combat, great soundtrack. It's as good as retro revivals get, but it just didn't catch on. I mean, this game even has a good price point. It was $30 at launch. It's still $30, might I add. And good on them for sticking there because it's worth more than $30. This is a long game, at least by the standards of what it is. It's a full feeling game, I guess is the right way to put it. I think Sega's probably partially to blame here. Basically every major game for them underperformed if their financial report is to be believed. Why wouldn't it be? All their Switch 2 ports sold below expectations. Their Rovio titles didn't. Claire Obscure Expedition 33, they published that one in Japan. It's a JRPG. And Sega is frankly probably at their strongest in Japan, or should be anyway. It sold below expectations though. Maybe it's a Sega problem. I think they probably could and should have done more to raise awareness of this game. Launching next to other retro ninja side-scroller revivals like Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, I think probably did not help it. Maybe even just delaying the release a little bit would have helped it. I don't know. It's maybe stuff that maybe wouldn't have helped, but sometimes games just fall through the cracks, man. This is one that should not have. You absolutely are required to buy this game. If you don't believe me, there's a free demo of this one. Download it. I swear to God, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I gotta buy this one. And number 3 is Keeper. Speaking of games that fell through the cracks, Double Fine's newest game came and went barely with anybody even knowing it's there. The game's currently only got 622 reviews on Steam, with an all-time peak player count of 191, abysmally small for a high-profile game developer like Double Fine. The game got good reviews, but nobody played it. And the vast majority of players that did probably played it on Game Pass, and Xbox almost never reveals any kind of information from that if they can help it, but still, I cannot imagine they were a lot higher there if the Steam sales were as low as they appear to be. The game itself is one of those inside-style atmospheric adventure games, but with really weirder premise where you play as a literal lighthouse. As far as these games go, it's actually one of the best. It's got incredible art design, the puzzles are clever, it's engaging, there's crazy twists to take the story in unexpected directions. It's basically an indie game done on a much bigger budget, made by some really talented and skilled designers. It's the sort of game Double Fine makes in their sleep, and you might think that means it's dull and safe, but it's not. They put a ton of effort into it, and it could have not been that. They could have easily pushed it out to have a bullet point to drive people to Game Pass subscription. It's a game that absolutely did not need to be as good or creative creative as it was, but it was. Xbox just doesn't care about it, and Double Fine was maybe done a little dirty here. And number 2 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. With massive games like this, even doing extremely well isn't good enough. It's why a game like this can get a subheading on Wikipedia called Sales, with an opening paragraph that goes on and on about how the game broke sales records left and right, and then you get to the second paragraph where Square Enix announces that the game fell below expectations. At this level, a game can do both of those things at once, partially because of the extremely high cost of development, which is estimated to be between $100 and $200 million, maybe even higher. And in comparison to the sales of the first Final Fantasy VII Remake, which at least according to some analysts, maybe sold twice as much as Rebirth did in the same time frame. Rebirth is an incredible achievement. It is the ultimate maximalist video game, period. They threw everything in the kitchen sink into it. It is jam-packed with stuff, and what's especially impressive is the quality of all of that stuff. It is a game that is operating on extremely high fidelity in every respect, at every point, and it remains consistent throughout. There are some annoying mini-games, and the size of the thing can be overwhelming, but in general, it's an extremely impressive game that improves on the first remake in just about every way, and it was not a flop. They're not shuttering the remake project because of the sales. They weren't bad. To be clear, they were quite good, but it's pretty clear that Square Enix are trying to move on from the game rather than add standalone DLC like they did with the first remake. Instead, they're just pushing through to the next game to wrap up the trilogy, which is probably the best move, to be clear. The game's apparent lack of sales success has caused a lot of hand-wringing in the industry from fans and insiders alike, but I think the simple answer is that splitting the project into 3 games was always going to lead to diminishing returns. The more casual audience got their nostalgia hit from the first one, and they don't need to come back for more. Also, maybe it could have been 80% of what it was. I'm not saying it's bad that it was all that it is. I'm saying it would have cost significantly less to do most of the things here to the level that they were done and do a little bit less of them. I think it's unfair that this game had to make as much money as it needed to make in order to be a success. And I'm just going to be serious here. Even if they did 80% of what they did, if they cut back the scale of the more optional stuff by 10 to 20%, the game budget would have been quite a bit lower, and it still would have been the ultimate maximalist video game. So maybe that's a lesson they're taking through to the third. But also, maybe part of the lesson that people are learning from games like this is that if it is profitable, that's good. Even if it's not all of the money, you kind of don't actually need all of the money. If you can make a $200 million game that actually does sell well, just not enough to meet your... Let's be clear, Square Enix has very high, stupid expectations in the same way as a couple of the other publishers we mentioned here. I don't know. This was finally at number 1, Neon Inferno. This is an indie game with some of the best pixel art I've ever seen in a game. It is an incredible soundtrack going all the time, super intense, super satisfying shooting, probably some of the best I've ever seen in a side-scroller, honestly. And the amount of people who have played it is just abysmally low. This game's Steam charts are shocking. Nobody has played this game. It's got like 200 reviews, and the peak player count is 103. I've had this game on my Steam Deck for a while, and it's freaking incredible. It's an awesome game with a unique gimmick where you hold down a button to fire into the background. It's a mix of Contra and Sunset Riders with a cyberpunk flavor, and it just works incredibly well. There is even a parry system where you can knock back enemy bullets. It's unnecessary, but it's really satisfying. Like, this is a straight up incredibly good shoot 'em up that needs to be played by more than a few dozen people. Maybe the sales numbers on the Switch 2 blow the Steam release out of the water. I don't know. But either way, these numbers don't bode well for the game in general. The developers are still working on it and released a patch that fixes a lot of the issues that the game's tiny community does have with it, or did. It's a better time than ever to jump in on this one, though. This is another one where there's a demo. Try it. I promise you'll find this enjoyable. It's also $20. It's insane this game has not done, but it is incredible. It doesn't need to be the highest grossing game of the year or anything, but this deserves more than 200 reviews. So many games get released on Steam at any given time that a lot of them just get completely ignored, and a lot of them deserve it, but this doesn't. This is a game that we are taking the strength of gameranx and saying play it. In fact, all of the games on this list, I am asking you to pick at least one. This is kind of what the 1% club that we've got going. If you go down into the description, we've got a join button. That'll give you access to the Falcon Show podcast, which we upload every Saturday. And a lot of that is centered on just trying to get these single-player games that are just phenomenal, some more attention, and remind people that there's some really good stuff out there. With that, I'm going to say that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first. Of course, it is a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. Join the 1% Club. Listen to the Falcon Show every Saturday. And we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.